Behind the grand gates of Adelaide Cottage, where morning mist dances through ancient oak trees and royal traditions run as deep as the Thames itself, a single moment would change everything. It was supposed to be just another routine visit, another carefully orchestrated royal engagement where protocol ruled and everyone knew their place. But sometimes the heart speaks louder than centuries of tradition, and sometimes a guard's unwavering loyalty to his beloved Wales becomes the spark that ignites a story the world would never forget. What happens when duty collides with deep-rooted cultural pride? When a man sworn to protect must choose between following orders and honoring the land that shaped his very soul. In the shadow of one of Britain's most treasured royal residences, a drama was about to unfold that would test loyalties, challenge conventions, and reveal truths that the palace walls had kept hidden for far too long. This is not just a story about royalty and protocol. This is a story about identity, belonging, and the courage it takes to stand up for what you believe in, even when the whole world is watching. The morning sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured grounds of Adelaide Cottage as Gareth Williams adjusted his uniform for what he thought would be just another ordinary day. At 42, Gareth had spent nearly 2 decades serving in the Royal Protection Unit, but his heart had never left the rolling hills of Snowdonia, where he was born and raised. Every morning, as he walked through the English countryside surrounding the cottage, he would whisper a quiet greeting in Welsh to the ancient trees, as if they could somehow carry his words back home to Wales. Adelaide Cottage held special significance for Gareth, not because of its royal connections or its picture-perfect location in Windsor Home Park, but because it represented something deeper. This was where the Prince and Princess of Wales made their home, where Welsh heritage lived and breathed within the very walls of the English establishment. For a man who had grown up speaking Welsh before English, who had learned the ancient songs of his ancestors at his grandmother's knee, this assignment felt like destiny. The cottage itself was a masterpiece of understated elegance. Built in 1831 as a retreat for Queen Adelaide, it had been lovingly restored and modernized while maintaining its historical charm. The pink-rendered walls caught the morning light beautifully, and the surrounding gardens bloomed with flowers that seemed to dance in the gentle breeze. But for Gareth, the real beauty lay in what the cottage represented, a place where Welsh identity could flourish within the British royal family. As he conducted his morning security rounds, Gareth's radio crackled to life. The voice on the other end was crisp and efficient, carrying the unmistakable authority of the Central Command. "Williams, we have an unscheduled visit from Queen Camilla's security team arriving in 30 minutes. Standard protocol applies. Ensure all access points are secure and prepare for their arrival." Gareth felt his stomach tighten slightly. Unscheduled visits were unusual, especially from the Queen's team. He had always maintained a professional relationship with all members of the royal family and their staff, but there was something about this particular visit that made him uneasy. Perhaps it was the timing, or maybe it was the way the message had been delivered with such cold formality. He made his way to the main entrance of Adelaide Cottage, checking his equipment and ensuring that everything was in perfect order. The Welsh flag pin on his lapel, barely visible but meaningful to him, caught a ray of sunlight. It was a small token of his heritage that he wore every day, a reminder of who he was beneath the uniform and the duty. The grounds around Adelaide Cottage were peaceful this morning. A few gardeners worked quietly in the distance, tending to the flower beds that would soon burst into their full spring glory. The cottage staff moved about their duties with the quiet efficiency that marked all royal households. Everyone had their role, everyone knew their place, and the machinery of royal life moved forward with clockwork precision. But Garrett's mind was elsewhere. He thought about his childhood in a small village outside Carnarvon, where Welsh was the language of daily life, and English was something you learned in school. He remembered his grandfather, a proud man who had worked in the slate quarries and who had instilled in him a deep love for Welsh culture and tradition. "Remember who you are, Bach," his grandfather would say, using the Welsh term of endearment. "No matter where life takes you, Never forget where you come from. Those words had guided Gareth through his military service, through his training with the Royal Protection Unit, and through countless assignments where he had to balance his personal identity with his professional duties. Most of the time, that balance came naturally. He served the crown with dedication and pride, understanding that the royal family, particularly the Prince and Princess of Wales, represented a bridge between Welsh heritage and British unity. As the minutes ticked by, Gareth found himself thinking about the recent changes in the royal family dynamics. Since Queen Elizabeth II's passing and King Charles's ascension to the throne, there had been subtle shifts in how different branches of the family interacted. The relationship between the king and queen and the prince and princess of Wales had always been complex, layered with generational differences and varying approaches to royal duty. The sound of approaching vehicles broke through his thoughts. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows were making their way down the private road that led to Adelaide Cottage. Gareth straightened his posture and prepared to follow standard protocol. As the vehicles came to a stop, he recognized the license plates and security details. This was indeed Queen Camilla's team. The first person to emerge was Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell, a woman Gareth had worked with on several occasions. She was professional, efficient, and generally pleasant to deal with. But today, something was different about her demeanor. She approached Gareth with a more formal bearing than usual, her expression serious and uncompromising. "Good morning, Williams," she said, her voice carrying an edge that Gareth hadn't heard before. "We need to conduct a security sweep of Adelaide Cottage. Standard procedure, but we need immediate access to all areas of the residence." Gareth nodded politely, but felt a flutter of concern. "Good morning, Detective Inspector Mitchell. I'll need to verify this request with Central Command. As you know, protocol requires advance notification for security sweeps, especially when the residence is currently occupied." Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "This comes directly from the Queen's office, Williams. We don't have time for additional verification. The security sweep needs to happen now." There was something in her tone that set off alarm bells in Gareth's mind. In his years of service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, those instincts were telling him that something wasn't right. He had never known the Queen's security team to bypass standard protocols, no matter how urgent the situation. "I understand the urgency, Detective Inspector," Gareth replied carefully, "but I'm sure you'll understand that I need to follow proper procedures. Let me contact Central Command to confirm the authorization, and then I'll be happy to facilitate the security sweep." As he reached for his radio, Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a more threatening tone. "Williams, I'm ordering you to provide immediate access. This is a matter of royal security, and any delay could be considered a dereliction of duty." Gareth felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his voice steady and professional. "With respect, Detective Inspector, my duty is to protect this residence and its occupants according to established protocols. I will not compromise that duty without proper authorization." The standoff lasted only a few seconds, but to Gareth, it felt like an eternity. Behind Sarah, he could see other members of her team emerging from the vehicles, their body language suggesting they were prepared for confrontation. The peaceful morning atmosphere around Adelaide Cottage had suddenly become charged with tension. "Very well," Sarah said finally, stepping back. "But understand this, Williams, your obstruction of this security operation will be noted in my report. I hope for your sake that you're prepared to explain your actions to your superiors." As the Queen's security team retreated to their vehicles to presumably contact their own headquarters, Gareth immediately got on his radio to Central Command. The conversation that followed would later be described by his colleagues as one of the most tense exchanges they had ever heard over the security channels. "Central Command, this is Williams at Adelaide Cottage. I need immediate verification of an authorized security sweep by Queen Camilla's team. They're requesting immediate access without following standard protocol." The response came back quickly, and it was not what Gareth had expected. "Williams, we have no record of any authorized security sweep at Adelaide Cottage today. Maintain your position and deny access until further notice. We're investigating this matter immediately. Gareth felt a chill run down his spine. An unauthorized security team attempting to gain access to a royal residence was a serious matter, potentially a matter of national security. He looked back at Sarah's team, who were still clustered around their vehicles, apparently engaged in heated phone conversations. The peaceful morning at Adelaide Cottage had transformed into something far more complex and potentially dangerous. As Gareth stood at his post, the Welsh flag pin on his lapel seemed to catch the light more brightly, as if reminding him of his grandfather's words about remembering who he was and where he came from. Little did he know that this morning would test not just his professional training, but the very core of his identity as a Welshman serving in the British royal establishment. The decisions he made in the next few hours would ripple through the corridors of power and challenge assumptions about loyalty, duty, and the complex relationship between England and Wales within the modern monarchy. As he waited for further instructions from Central Command, Gareth couldn't shake the feeling that this was about more than just a security sweep. Something deeper was at play, something that touched on the very foundations of royal protocol and perhaps even the delicate balance of power within the royal family itself. The morning sun continued to shine down on Adelaide Cottage, but the shadows had grown longer and, somehow, more ominous. In the distance, he could hear the everyday sounds of the estate. Gardeners working, staff going about their duties, the normal rhythm of life continuing obliviously around what was shaping up to be a very unusual day. Gareth Williams, the boy from Snowdonia who had grown up to serve the crown, stood at his post and prepared for whatever was about to unfold. He had no way of knowing that his actions on this seemingly ordinary morning would soon make headlines around the world and force a conversation about identity, loyalty, and the changing face of the British monarchy in the 21st century. The tension around Adelaide Cottage grew thicker as the morning progressed. Gareth Williams found himself at the center of what was rapidly becoming a diplomatic crisis within the royal security establishment. His radio had been buzzing with encrypted communications for the past 20 minutes, and each message seemed to add another layer of complexity to an already unprecedented situation. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell had returned from her vehicle consultation with a different approach. Gone was the direct confrontation of earlier. Now she seemed to be employing a more psychological strategy. She approached Gareth with what appeared to be genuine concern in her eyes, though he remained wary. "Gareth," she said, using his first name for the first time that morning, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we can resolve this without involving higher authorities. You know how these bureaucratic mix-ups can spiral out of control." Gareth studied her face carefully. In his years of security work, he had learned to read people, to detect the subtle signs that revealed true intentions beneath polished exteriors. Sarah was skilled at projecting authority and confidence, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she was operating under pressure from someone else, someone with more power and influence than she wielded. "I appreciate your concern, Detective Inspector," Gareth replied, maintaining his professional tone, "but Central Command has been very clear. No unauthorized access to Adelaide Cottage until this matter is resolved through proper channels." Behind Sarah, her team had begun to spread out around the cottage grounds. It wasn't an aggressive deployment, but it was clearly a tactical positioning that would allow them to control multiple access points if the situation escalated. Gareth noted their positions while appearing to focus solely on Sarah. His training had taught him to maintain situational awareness even during intense conversations. "Let me ask you something, Gareth," Sarah continued, her voice taking on a more personal tone. "How long have you been assigned to Adelaide Cottage?" "Nearly 3 years," Gareth answered, wondering where this line of questioning was leading. 3 years protecting the Prince and Princess of Wales. You must have developed quite an attachment to this assignment." Sarah paused, studying his reaction. "I imagine it feels special, doesn't it? Protecting the future king and queen, especially given your background." Gareth felt his jaw tighten slightly. The way she emphasized background carried implications that made him uncomfortable. "My personal background has never interfered with my professional duties, Detective Inspector," I serve the crown with equal dedication regardless of which member of the royal family I'm assigned to protect. Of course, Sarah said, but her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. It's just that some people in the security establishment have noted your particular enthusiasm for this assignment. The Welsh connection and all that. The conversation was taking a turn that Gareth hadn't expected. He realized that Sarah wasn't just trying to gain access to Adelaide Cottage. She was probing his loyalties, testing whether his Welsh identity created any conflicts with his duty to the broader royal family. It was a line of inquiry that touched on some of his deepest personal values. My enthusiasm, as you put it, comes from my commitment to excellence in serving the crown, Gareth said firmly. The Prince and Princess of Wales represent the future of the monarchy, and protecting that future is a responsibility I take very seriously. Sarah nodded, but her expression suggested she was filing away every word for later analysis. The future of the monarchy, yes, but monarchies can be complex institutions, can't they? Sometimes different branches of the family have different visions for that future. The implication was clear, and Gareth felt a surge of anger that he had to struggle to control. Sarah was suggesting that his loyalty to the Prince and Princess of Wales might be in conflict with his loyalty to King Charles and Queen Camilla. It was exactly the kind of divisive thinking that he had hoped would have no place in modern royal security operations. I serve the crown, Detective Inspector, Gareth said, his voice harder now. All members of the royal family have my unwavering loyalty and protection. I don't play favorites, and I don't appreciate the suggestion that I might. Before Sarah could respond, Gareth's radio crackled with an urgent message. Williams, this is Commander Harrison. We need you to maintain your position at all costs. We're en route with additional support. The situation you're dealing with is more complex than initially assessed. Commander Harrison was Gareth's direct superior, a man he respected enormously. If Harrison was personally responding to the situation, it meant that this incident had escalated to the highest levels of royal security. Gareth acknowledged the transmission and looked back at Sarah, whose expression had changed dramatically. It seems your superiors are taking this very seriously, she observed, no longer bothering to hide her frustration. I hope you understand the position you're putting yourself in, Williams. Sometimes loyalty to immediate supervisors can conflict with loyalty to the institution as a whole. Gareth was beginning to understand that this confrontation was about much more than a simple security sweep. There were currents of institutional politics at play that went far beyond his role as a protection officer. Sarah's team wasn't just here to search Adelaide Cottage. They were here to send a message about power dynamics within the royal family. My position is exactly where it should be, Gareth replied. Protecting this residence and its occupants according to established protocols. As if summoned by the growing tension, the front door of Adelaide Cottage opened, and Princess Catherine emerged. She was dressed casually, but elegantly, clearly prepared for a day of engagements. Her presence immediately changed the dynamic of the entire situation. Both Gareth and Sarah straightened their postures, professional respect overriding personal tensions. Good morning, Gareth, Princess Catherine said with her characteristic warmth. Is everything all right? I noticed there seemed to be more activity than usual this morning. Gareth felt a moment of internal conflict. Princess Catherine wasn't supposed to be involved in security matters, but her presence complicated an already delicate situation. He needed to provide her with information without compromising operational security or escalating tensions with Sarah's team. Good morning, Your Royal Highness, Gareth replied. We're dealing with a routine security matter. Nothing that should concern you. Princess Catherine's eyes, however, were sharp and observant. She had clearly noticed the tactical positioning of Sarah's team and the tension in the air. I see. Well, I'm sure you'll handle whatever needs to be handled with your usual professionalism. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. She was publicly expressing confidence in Gareth's judgment, which sent a clear message to everyone present about where her trust lay. It was a subtle but powerful statement of support that did not go unnoticed by anyone in the vicinity. Sarah cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with Princess Catherine's presence, but unable to ignore it. Your Royal Highness, we're conducting a routine security assessment. We appreciate your cooperation in allowing us to complete our work efficiently. Princess Catherine turned to look at Sarah directly, and Gareth could see the princess's extensive training in diplomacy and public relations come into play. Her smile remained warm, but her eyes were calculating as she assessed the situation. Of course, Princess Catherine replied. I'm sure any security assessment can be coordinated through the proper channels to ensure minimal disruption to everyone's schedule. The phrase, proper channels, was loaded with meaning, and everyone present understood its significance. Princess Catherine was diplomatically supporting Gareth's position while maintaining her own dignity and authority. It was a masterful demonstration of royal protocol in action. Sarah's radio, suddenly, came to life with what sounded like urgent instructions. She moved away from the group to take the call, leaving Gareth and Princess Catherine momentarily alone. The princess took the opportunity to speak more directly. Gareth, I want you to know that Prince William and I have complete confidence in your judgment, she said quietly. Whatever decisions you need to make, you have our full support. The words hit Gareth with unexpected emotional force. To have the direct support of the future queen during such a complex situation was both reassuring and humbling. It reminded him why he had been drawn to this assignment in the first place. Not just because of Welsh connections, but because of the character and integrity of the people he was protecting. Thank you, Your Royal Highness, Gareth replied. I won't let you down. Princess Catherine smiled genuinely. I know you won't. You never have. As she returned to Adelaide Cottage, Gareth felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever political currents were swirling around this situation, his duty remained clear. He was here to protect the Prince and Princess of Wales, and he would do that regardless of pressure from other quarters. Sarah returned from her radio conversation looking frustrated and perhaps a bit desperate. Her instructions from higher up had clearly not been what she hoped to hear. She approached Gareth one more time, but now her earlier confidence had been replaced by something closer to resignation. Williams, I'm going to ask you one more time to reconsider your position. The people I work for have long memories, and they don't forget those who make their jobs more difficult than necessary. Gareth looked at her steadily. Detective Inspector Mitchell, I'm going to tell you something my grandfather once told me. He said that when you stand up for what's right, you might stand alone for a while, but eventually the right people will stand with you. I'm comfortable standing exactly where I am. The reference to his grandfather and his Welsh upbringing was deliberate. Gareth was making it clear that his principles were rooted in something deeper than job security or career advancement. He was drawing on a well of personal strength that Sarah's threats couldn't touch. In the distance, the sound of approaching vehicles could be heard. Commander Harrison and his team were arriving, which meant that the next phase of this confrontation was about to begin. Gareth straightened his shoulders and prepared for whatever was coming next. The morning that had started so peacefully at Adelaide Cottage had become a test of loyalties, principles, and the complex relationships that existed within the modern British monarchy. Gareth Williams, the Welsh guard who had grown up in the shadow of Snowdonia, found himself at the center of forces much larger than himself. But he also found himself standing on solid ground, supported by the values his grandfather had instilled in him and the confidence of the royal couple he had sworn to protect. Whatever came next, he would face it with the knowledge that he had remained true to both his professional duties and his personal principles. The confrontation was far from over, but Gareth Williams was ready for whatever lay ahead. Commander Harrison arrived at Adelaide Cottage with the kind of quiet authority that immediately changed the entire atmosphere. Behind him came 2 additional security vehicles and a small team of senior royal protection officers. Gareth felt a wave of relief wash over him as his superior approached, but he could also see that Harrison's expression was grave, suggesting that the situation was even more serious than he had initially understood. Williams, Commander Harrison said as he reached Gareth's position, brief me on the current situation. Gareth quickly and professionally outlined the morning's events, from the initial unscheduled arrival of Sarah's team to their insistence on immediate access without proper authorization. Harrison listened intently, occasionally glancing at Sarah's team, who had now clustered around their vehicles and appeared to be engaged in intense discussions with their own headquarters. "You did the right thing," Harrison said when Gareth finished his report. "What you don't know is that we've been monitoring some concerning communications over the past few weeks. This incident appears to be part of a larger pattern that we're only now beginning to understand." Harrison's words sent a chill through Gareth. The idea that this confrontation was part of something bigger, something that had been planned and coordinated, made the morning's events take on a much more sinister significance. He waited for his commander to provide more details. There have been questions raised in certain quarters about the autonomy and independence of the Prince and Princess of Wales, Harrison continued, keeping his voice low enough that only Gareth could hear. "Some people believe that their growing popularity and influence need to be managed more carefully." The implications of Harrison's words were staggering. Gareth realized that he had inadvertently become involved in what amounted to an internal power struggle within the royal family structure. The security sweep that Sarah's team had demanded wasn't about protecting anyone. It was about gathering information or establishing control. "Sir, are you saying that this was an attempt to spy on the prince and princess?" Gareth asked, barely believing the words as they left his mouth. Harrison's expression remained carefully neutral, but his eyes confirmed what Gareth was beginning to understand. "I'm saying that your instincts this morning were absolutely correct, and that your adherence to protocol may have prevented a serious breach of trust and privacy." At that moment, Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell approached them. Her earlier confidence had been replaced by a more defensive posture, and Gareth could see that she was now aware that the situation had moved beyond her control. The arrival of Commander Harrison and his team had shifted the balance of power dramatically. "Commander Harrison," Sarah said, attempting to maintain her professional demeanor, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about our mission here today. We were operating under direct orders from our superiors to conduct a routine security assessment." Harrison studied Sarah for a long moment before responding. "Detective Inspector Mitchell, I'm sure you were following orders as you understood them. However, we have no record of any authorized security assessment at Adelaide Cottage, and protocol clearly states that such operations must be coordinated through Central Command." Sarah's jaw tightened. "With respect, Commander, there are sometimes security operations that operate outside normal channels for operational reasons. I'm sure you understand the complexities involved in protecting multiple members of the royal family with potentially conflicting security needs." The phrase "potentially conflicting security needs" hung in the air like a charged cloud. Harrison's expression hardened, and Gareth realized that Sarah had just confirmed some of his superiors' worst suspicions about the true nature of this operation. "Detective Inspector," Harrison said, his voice carrying unmistakable authority, "there are no conflicting security needs within the royal family. The protection of all members operates under unified command and coordination. Any suggestion otherwise represents a fundamental misunderstanding of our mission and responsibilities." The confrontation between Harrison and Sarah was playing out on multiple levels. On the surface, it was a professional disagreement about protocols and procedures. But underneath, it was a clash between different visions of how the royal family should operate and who should have ultimate authority over security decisions. Gareth found himself thinking about his grandfather's stories of working in the slate quarries of Wales. His grandfather had often talked about the importance of solidarity among workers, about how they had to stick together against management attempts to divide them. The parallels to the current situation were striking, though the stakes were obviously much higher. "Commander Harrison," Sarah tried again, "perhaps we could discuss this matter privately. I'm sure we can find a resolution that satisfies everyone's concerns." But Harrison shook his head firmly. "This matter will be resolved through proper channels, Detective Inspector. I suggest you return to your headquarters and discuss the situation with your superiors. They can contact me directly if they have concerns about security protocols at Adelaide Cottage." As this exchange was taking place, Gareth noticed movement at the cottage. Prince William had emerged and was standing on the front steps, clearly observing the situation. His presence added another layer of complexity to an already delicate situation. The future king was witnessing firsthand a confrontation between different security teams supposedly working for the same institution. Prince William approached the group with the confident bearing that marked his royal training, but Gareth could see concern in his eyes. This was his home, his family's sanctuary, and it was being treated as a potential battlefield between competing security interests. "Good morning, Commander Harrison," Prince William said, acknowledging the senior officer. "Gareth mentioned there was some kind of security matter this morning. I hope everything is being resolved satisfactorily." Harrison straightened even further, if that was possible. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness. We're addressing some procedural concerns, but everything is under control." Prince William nodded, but his gaze moved to Sarah and her team. "I see. Well, I want to express my complete confidence in our regular security arrangements. Gareth and his team have always provided exemplary service, and I have no concerns about their ability to protect my family." The statement was diplomatic but pointed. Prince William was making it clear that he supported his current security team and was not asking for additional oversight or intervention. It was a subtle but powerful rejection of whatever agenda had brought Sarah's team to Adelaide Cottage. Sarah looked increasingly uncomfortable as she realized that she was losing ground on multiple fronts. Her unauthorized security sweep had been blocked, her superior numbers had been matched by Harrison's arrival, and now she was facing direct rejection from the very person she claimed to be trying to protect. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah said, making one last attempt to salvage her mission, "security assessments are sometimes necessary to ensure that all protective measures are operating at optimal levels. We're simply trying to ensure your continued safety." Prince William's response was measured but firm. "I appreciate your concern for my family's safety. However, I have complete confidence in the current security arrangements. Any changes or assessments should be coordinated through Commander Harrison and his team." It was a diplomatic but decisive rejection. Sarah had been given a face-saving explanation for withdrawing, but the message was clear. Her services were not wanted or needed at Adelaide Cottage. As Sarah's team began to pack up their equipment and prepare to leave, Gareth felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief was certainly prominent, but he also felt a deep concern about what this incident revealed about tensions within the royal establishment. If there were indeed people willing to bypass established protocols to gather information about the Prince and Princess of Wales, it suggested problems that went far beyond security procedures. Commander Harrison approached Gareth as the other team departed. "Williams, I want you to know that your actions today will be noted in your file as exemplary service. You followed protocol exactly as you should have, and you maintained your integrity under considerable pressure." "Thank you, sir," Gareth replied. "But I have to ask, what happens now? If there are people willing to attempt something like this once, they might try again." Harrison's expression was thoughtful. "You're right to be concerned. This incident has revealed some troubling undercurrents that we'll need to address at the highest levels. But for now, your job remains the same. Protect the Prince and Princess of Wales according to established protocols." As the morning settled back into its normal rhythm, Gareth found himself reflecting on the deeper implications of what had occurred. The incident had not just been about security protocols or professional jurisdictions. It had been about loyalty, identity, and the question of where ultimate authority resided within the royal establishment. His Welsh heritage had played a role in the confrontation, but not in the way that Sarah had suggested. It wasn't that his Welsh identity created divided loyalties. Rather, it had given him the strength and perspective to stand firm when pressured to compromise his principles. The values his grandfather had instilled in him, integrity, loyalty, and the courage to stand up for what was right, had guided him through the morning's challenges. Princess Catherine emerged from the cottage later that afternoon, approaching Gareth with a warm smile. "I wanted to thank you personally for your professionalism this morning. Prince William and are very grateful for your dedication." "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," Gareth replied. It's an honor to serve. Gareth, she continued, using his first name in a gesture of personal connection, I hope you know that we see you not just as our security officer, but as someone who truly understands and supports what we're trying to accomplish. That means more than you might realize. Her words touched something deep in Gareth's heart. The princess was acknowledging not just his professional service, but his personal commitment to their vision of modern royal duty. It was a recognition that his Welsh background and his dedication to the future of the monarchy were not in conflict, but rather complemented each other perfectly. As evening fell over Adelaide Cottage, Gareth took a moment to call his family in Wales. He couldn't discuss the specific events of the day, but he could share his continued pride in his role and his gratitude for the values they had instilled in him. "How are things at the cottage, Bach?" his mother asked, using the Welsh endearment that always made him smile. "They're good, ma'am," he replied in Welsh. "Really good. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The morning's confrontation had tested Gareth Williams in ways he had never expected when he first put on the uniform of the Royal Protection Unit. But it had also confirmed something important. His identity as a Welshman and his duty as a Royal Protection Officer were not competing loyalties, but rather different expressions of the same fundamental commitment to service, integrity, and protecting what mattered most. The Wales-only zone that had protected Adelaide Cottage that morning wasn't about excluding others or creating divisions. It was about maintaining the integrity of established systems and protecting the autonomy of the future king and queen. In standing firm at his post, Gareth had not just followed protocol. He had helped preserve something essential about the relationship between the monarchy and the people it served. The story was far from over, but Gareth Williams could rest that evening knowing that he had met the test of his principles and emerged with his integrity intact. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation at Adelaide Cottage, but the ripple effects continued to spread through the corridors of power. Gareth Williams had returned to his regular duties, maintaining his professional demeanor and dedication, but he was acutely aware that the incident had marked a turning point not just in his own career, but in the broader dynamics of royal security and family relationships. The official investigation into the unauthorized security sweep had been conducted with typical royal discretion. No public statements were made, no heads rolled publicly, but those within the system understood that significant changes were taking place behind the scenes. Commander Harrison had kept Gareth informed of the key developments, and the picture that emerged was both troubling and ultimately reassuring. The investigation confirmed what we suspected, Harrison had told Gareth during a private briefing. There was a coordinated effort to gather intelligence on the Prince and Princess of Wales' private activities and communications. The people behind it believed that the couple was becoming too independent in their approach to royal duties. Gareth felt a familiar surge of anger at the revelation. So they were essentially spying on the future king and queen? In essence, yes, Harrison replied. But the attempt was clumsy and ultimately self-defeating. Your refusal to allow unauthorized access not only prevented a serious breach of privacy, but it also exposed the entire operation. The investigation had revealed a network of individuals within various royal establishments who had been concerned about what they perceive as the Prince and Princess of Wales' growing independence from traditional royal protocols. These concerns had led to increasingly intrusive attempts to monitor and control the couple's activities, culminating in the failed security sweep at Adelaide Cottage. What made the situation particularly troubling was that some of the people involved genuinely believed they were acting in the best interests of the monarchy. They saw the Prince and Princess of Wales' modern approach to royal duty as potentially destabilizing to traditional structures and hierarchies. Their actions, while misguided, were motivated by a desire to preserve what they saw as essential royal traditions. But the investigation had also revealed strong support for the Prince and Princess of Wales at the highest levels. King Charles, despite the complex relationship with his son, had been unequivocal in his condemnation of the surveillance attempts. The idea that members of his own establishment would spy on his son and daughter-in-law had reportedly left him both furious and deeply saddened. The morning of Gareth's first security briefing after the investigation's completion, he found himself walking through the gardens of Adelaide Cottage with renewed appreciation for his role. The cottage had returned to its peaceful routine, but there was an underlying strength and confidence that hadn't been there before. The incident had, paradoxically, made the Prince and Princess of Wales' position stronger rather than weaker. Princess Catherine had emerged as a particular beneficiary of the situation. Her grace under pressure during the confrontation had impressed even skeptical observers within the royal establishment. Her quiet but firm support of Gareth and the existing security arrangements had demonstrated both loyalty and political acumen. She was increasingly being seen not just as a future queen consort, but as a formidable figure in her own right. Prince William, too, had gained stature from the incident. His calm handling of a potentially explosive situation and his clear support for his security team had shown the kind of leadership qualities that would serve him well as king. The attempt to undermine his autonomy had instead highlighted his readiness to take on greater responsibilities. For Gareth personally, the aftermath had been overwhelmingly positive. His actions during the confrontation had earned him recognition not just from his immediate superiors, but from the highest levels of the Royal Protection Service. Commander Harrison had informed him that he was being considered for promotion and additional responsibilities. But perhaps more importantly, the incident had clarified his own sense of purpose and identity. The questions that Sarah Mitchell had raised about his Welsh background and potential divided loyalties had forced him to examine his own motivations and commitments. What he had discovered was that his Welsh heritage and his service to the crown were not in conflict, but rather mutually reinforcing. His grandfather's teachings about integrity, loyalty, and standing up for what was right had guided him through the confrontation. But those same values were also what made him an effective protector of the future king and queen. The Prince and Princess of Wales represented a vision of the monarchy that honored tradition while embracing necessary change. A vision that resonated deeply with Gareth's own understanding of how institutions could evolve while maintaining their essential character. The incident had also strengthened the relationship between Gareth and the royal couple he protected. There was now a level of trust and mutual respect that went beyond the normal professional relationship between security officers and their charges. They had been tested together and had emerged stronger as a team. One afternoon, Prince William had approached Gareth during a routine security check with an unusual request. "Gareth, Catherine, and I have been discussing the importance of having people around us who truly understand our vision for the future of the monarchy. We wondered if you might be interested in taking on some additional responsibilities, perhaps helping us think through security considerations for some new initiatives we're planning." The invitation was both an honor and a recognition of the trust that had been built during the confrontation. Gareth accepted gratefully, understanding that he was being offered the opportunity to help shape not just the security arrangements, but the broader strategic thinking of the future king and queen. The new initiatives that Prince William had mentioned turned out to be ambitious programs designed to modernize the monarchy's engagement with contemporary issues. There were plans for expanded mental health advocacy, environmental initiatives, and programs to bridge divides within British society. Each of these would require sophisticated security planning, but also a deep understanding of the couple's goals and values. Gareth found himself working closely with the Prince and Princess of Wales' private office, helping to develop security protocols that would allow them to pursue their objectives while maintaining appropriate protection. It was challenging work that required him to think creatively about balancing openness and accessibility with safety and protocol. The work also brought him into contact with a broader network of people who were committed to supporting the Prince and Princess of Wales' vision. He met private secretaries, communications specialists, and policy advisors who shared his dedication to helping the couple succeed. Many of them, he discovered, had their own stories of choosing to support the future king and queen despite pressure from other quarters. One evening, as Gareth was finishing his security rounds, Princess Catherine approached him with a special request. "Gareth, we're planning a visit to Wales next month, and we wondered if you might help us plan some elements of the trip. Your knowledge of Welsh culture and your connections in the community could be invaluable." The request was deeply meaningful to Gareth. He was being asked to help bridge his two worlds, his Welsh heritage and his royal service, in a way that would benefit both. The visit to Wales would be an opportunity for the Prince and Princess of Wales to deepen their connection with the Welsh people, and Gareth could play a role in making that connection authentic and meaningful. As he began planning for the Wales visit, Gareth reflected on how much had changed since that confrontational morning 3 weeks earlier. He had stood firm in his principles and his duties, and in doing so, he had helped protect not just the physical security of Adelaide Cottage, but the autonomy and integrity of the future king and queen. The incident had also revealed the strength and resilience of the institutions he served. When tested, the Royal Protection Service had rallied around proper protocols and professional standards. The royal family itself had demonstrated unity in the face of internal threats. And the Prince and Princess of Wales had shown that they were ready to face the challenges of their future roles with grace and determination. But perhaps most importantly for Gareth, the incident had shown him that his identity as a Welsh guard was not a limitation or a potential source of conflict, but rather a strength that enhanced his service to the crown. The values his grandfather had instilled in him, the importance of standing up for what was right, the strength that came from knowing who you were and where you came from, the loyalty that was earned rather than demanded. These were exactly the qualities that made him an effective protector of the monarchy's future. As he prepared for the Wales visit, Gareth thought about what his grandfather would have said about the morning's confrontation and its aftermath. He could almost hear the old man's voice. "You stood your ground, Bach. You remembered who you were and what you stood for. That's all any man can do." The Wales-only zone that Gareth had created around Adelaide Cottage that morning had been about more than following protocol or maintaining security. It had been about protecting the space where the future of the monarchy was taking shape, where tradition and innovation were being carefully balanced, where the Prince and Princess of Wales were preparing to lead Britain into a new era. In the months and years that would follow, Gareth Williams would continue to serve with distinction, his reputation enhanced by his principled stand during the confrontation. He would help plan successful royal visits to Wales, contribute to innovative security solutions for modern royal engagements, and play a small but significant role in supporting the Prince and Princess of Wales as they prepared for their future roles as king and queen. The morning that had started with such tension and uncertainty had ultimately become a defining moment, not just in Gareth's career, but in the evolution of the modern monarchy. By standing firm in his principles and his duties, a Welsh guard had helped protect something essential about the relationship between the royal family and the people they served. The story of the Wales-only zone would become part of the unofficial history of Adelaide Cottage, passed down among security personnel as an example of how individual integrity and institutional loyalty could work together to protect what mattered most. And for Gareth Williams, it would always be a reminder that the values his grandfather had taught him in the hills of Snowdonia were not just personal principles, but essential foundations for serving something larger than himself. The future of the monarchy was in good hands, protected not just by sophisticated security systems and elaborate protocols, but by people like Gareth Williams who understood that true security came from integrity, dedication, and the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it would have been easier to step aside. As the sun set over Adelaide Cottage on that peaceful evening 3 weeks after the confrontation, Gareth Williams stood at his post with quiet pride and deep satisfaction. He had been tested and had not been found wanting. The Wales-only zone he had created that morning had protected not just a building or even a family, but the future itself.